Hey, how's it going?
Mike's muted. Oh, nightmare, nightmare. Professional streamer, by the way. All right,
You're good.
that's cool. Yeah, what's up? What's up, guys? How we doing? Welcome. So, yeah, as I said, Morgan Day here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Right. Firstly, how you doing?
Pretty great. Just had my coffee, my breakfast. I'm ready to answer some questions.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's like 6 p.m. for me. I guess it's like super early for you at the moment.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, first one I got is about like tour gas, basically.
hmm
So, what are like some of the steps that you and the team are doing to like avoid like tour gas burnout? Like, 'cause
hmm
obviously, last night I think Ian announced that you can do it unlimited, which is really awesome. Like, super happy about that. But like, yeah, what are the kind of steps that you guys are taking to like make sure you're not like burning out super quick with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Ian mentioned, originally we had designed Torghast to require essentially a key or something that you would need to basically activate a Torghast run, similar to Perfect Visions that people are seeing right now in Battle for Azeroth. But with all the amazing alpha feedback we've been getting, we kept hearing people say, "Hey, could you please just let us, play Torghast as frequently as we want? Don't worry about, timers or things like that, and just let us play, till our heart's content, essentially." And one of the things that we felt that made that really awesome and compelling feedback to hear is that Torghast is a really replayable feature. It's something that we spend a tremendous amount of time with. The different anima powers. There are tons of different layouts for the floors. A lot of the creatures that you will see spawned on a particular floor are also spawned in a very dynamic way. So the replayability of the feature is something that we set out from the start to really as a major focus.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things that we wanted to make sure it continuously felt fresh, like you had a different potential build that you could do in each consecutive run. And in terms of the burnout element, I think a lot of that is driven by rewards. So it's something that we'll for sure be mindful of when we're thinking about how are we going to reward Torghast, how are we going to incentivize people to do the runs, and make sure that the reward structure supports something that isn't going to heavily incentivize that behavior.
Yeah, sounds good. I did see a few like random mounts sprouted in the mount journal from, well, presumably Torghast. I mean, they look very
Mhm.
Torghast-esque.
Sure.
Is there like random rares or bosses, like unnamed NPCs or anything like that in there that we could kind of look out for or anything that would drop
Totally.
like cool
So
stuff?
yeah, I mean, there are always amazing mounts that are, we have an incredible art team. They're constantly coming up with things that inspire us, and often, we'll have these really cool ideas for mounts, and not quite know even where we want to put them yet. So between Torghast and as well as the Maw, right? The Maw is an entire outdoor zone that is very different from something that we've seen before, and should feel very sandbox. Like
Hmm.
there's tons of discoverable content, and as you've seen with some of our previous more sandbox inspired content, there are often opportunities to find mounts or earn mounts with some kind of currency or something spread or sprinkled all throughout there. So yeah, I'm sure they'll be peppered all over the place from Torghast as well as the Maw, and maybe even some other locations.
Awesome. Yeah, there's just so many cool mounts. Like I love just going through like and typing in PH and then on the alpha and just seeing all the like crazy awesome models that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
coming
totally.
up.
We are also, I think I forget the name of the elemental, but it's that new, really scary looking elemental that you see throughout the mall. I think that's one of the mounts that we'll be rewarding from Mythic Plus with the most recent update in Battle for Azeroth. I think it was the most recent one. If you did all 15s in time, you would be
Ah,
rewarded with a mount. So I believe that one of those mounts is what will be the reward for doing
yeah.
all Mythic Plus 15s in once the Shadowlands releases.
That's the death elemental, right? The awesome
Yeah,
one you kind of surf on.
yeah,
That's incredible. So, a bit of a random question that someone asked me to ask you, and I was kind of thinking of it as well. We saw, I don't know if this is like placeholder or something of the alpha. We saw like a new minimap type in Torghast. It was like
yeah.
a minimap that kind of used the world map textures. What's the story with that?
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting story. So, when we were discussing Torghast and how we were going to be building the floors themselves, it was actually a lot. It's not something that we have done before, where we're essentially putting pieces of rooms together, and as we were constructing that, we were realizing that there's actually quite a few things that we were running into, like technical constraints essentially. So we had to come up with some more creative solutions for those things. But on the bright side, one of the really neat elements that we got out of using the world map as your mini map is we could also start to use more of a like that exploration feel where we're highlighting things with fog, or we're unlocking things or uncovering things from the fog of war essentially in Torghast as you're exploring it. So it was one of those kind of two birds with one stone where we're like, okay, we need to get creative with our solution here, but also this is going to allow us to do a pretty cool new thing with the fog of war and uncovering it in chunks essentially.
That's really cool. That is awesome. How many, like, do you have a number on how many different random rooms you created? I've seen the, like, top-down kind of mini-map thrown together. It's massive. There's so many different variants of rooms. Like, how many do you know in total? Man. There's a lot.
Individual rooms or, like, whole floors?
Well, there's, like, yeah, because some of them are a bit smaller than others, aren't there? There's, like, all sorts of different bits and
pieces. Yeah, because we kind of talk about it in terms of, like, almost playing with Lego pieces, right? Where you're like, all right, I've got this piece and I can block this room onto this room. So there's, I imagine, over 100 of those, individual pieces. But in terms of floors, I think we're above 80.
Wow. That's insane. That's awesome. The I noticed as well as you go between rooms at the moment on the alpha, it's kind of, I think there is a little bit of a loading screen, but I did see there was some stuff with instant teleportation between some zones on the alpha briefly. Is that something that we're going to see come in into Torghast?
Can you expand? What do you mean by
so
that?
We had there was a video I saw of someone going through a portal in Oribos. No, from Revendreth to Oribos, and it was instant. There wasn't any loading screen or anything like that. Which was really cool, and I was wondering if that's something that might come into Torghast as well.
That sounds like witchcraft. That sounds awesome.
Have you not seen
that video?
It's a real video, unless I made it up.
I mean, I believe you totally. I just haven't seen it myself. I mean, that's absolutely something that we have talked about often in terms of preloading specific areas. Yeah. It's something that, in some of our raids and dungeons where we might be teleporting you a long distance, we've always been like, man, it would be amazing if it was just like boom, snap, instant. Yeah. That's absolutely something we explore and have continued to, make improvements on. I'm not sure where the use cases of that in Torghast might be though.
That's cool. I'm just looking forward to the loading screen, honestly, of Torghast. Like all the loading screens we've seen so far are so incredible, and yes, I think the Torghast one's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, the art team does incredible work with all of that stuff.
So I guess moving into a bit of Mythic Plus.
Sure.
So with the kind of unpruning of spells, and we see a lot of weapon swap skills come back. So for warriors, for example, I think Shield Slam came baseline. Is weapon swapping something possibly coming back to Mythic Plus, or what's the story?
Right, because you can't swap your gear once a Mythic Plus run starts. That is a very good point. No one has pointed that out to me yet. And you're right, we should totally look into that, because if some of the weapon skills, like shield block, shield slam, stuff like that require a shield, then I should be able to put my shield on in the middle of a run. So I will make a note of that, and for sure we'll want to be sure to address that.
Amazing, thank you. And I guess speaking of Mythic Plus, the weekly chest, we did hear a little bit about it, I think it was like a couple of interviews ago, maybe with Ian or something like that, but do you have any more information on how that's going to kind of work with, because there's an NPC in Oribos you speak to and it kind of tells you a little bit about it, but obviously not in a gameplay sense, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we had heard a lot of feedback on and wanted to try to address with the Shadowlands is, and honestly in some cases also uniformed, separate, disparate systems. So there's the Mythic Plus chest that you get at the beginning of every raid reset with, depending on the level of your key that you completed, you get an item. And then there's also the PvP chest that, depending on if you've completed your PvP objectives for the week, you get loot there. And a piece of feedback we hear frequently is, cool, I got, another ring or another cloak or whatever it may be, something you don't need. And we wanted to really inject a lot more agency in that choice. And in Shadowlands, there will be multiple different objectives that, depending on your engagement in that objective, be it raids, PvP, or Mythic Plus, you'll get additional options in your chest at the end of the week. So you'll get a single item that you will be able to pull out of the chest, but you'll be able to pick from a lot of different options. And on top of that, if for whatever reason none of those options are compelling to you, there'll also be a really valuable currency that you could pick instead of one of those items. So there's always something of value that you can get out of your chest.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's pretty cool then. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I guess are we going to see like an iteration of that in the beta? Because obviously, I think Ian was saying about Mythic Plus coming in, where we have the weekly chest in there as well.
Yes, absolutely. That is for sure one of the systems that we want to get stood up and on the beta so that people can test it out as soon as possible. I don't know which beta we're aiming for, but we will for sure be aiming to get that up into players' hands.
Awesome! I can't wait. So I guess moving into Castle Nathria, awesome looking raid, like just looks absolutely amazing. Kind of got a glimpse of it in like a scenario, I think in Revendreth, looks absolutely incredible. So what is your favorite encounter of Castle Nathria?
What's my favorite encounter? That's like choosing a favorite child. There's a ton of really awesome and compelling stuff in Castle Nathria. I think one of the very early concept pieces that that was done for the Zone of Revendreth, I believe we showed it at BlizzCon. It's that really incredible, like wide lens shot of the zone with this huge epic castle in the middle of it. And I remember at the time when I saw that, I was like, I don't even know what our raid is for this expansion yet because it was so early in production. But I was like, that needs to be it. Like that's the raid, right? Like we get to go in there and kick butt because that thing is incredible. So there's tons of awesome inspiration that we were able to draw from for a lot of the encounters in there. It is I would think, considered more of a traditional winged dungeon where there's 2-3 boss wings with a wing boss that will be a step up in difficulty. But one of our main focuses with the raid was trying to make it feel like a living space, like a space that you would just walk into if you're, in a country that had castles all over the place. Like what would be in here? It should feel like a functional space, like it was built with a purpose. So, in some of the encounters, there's places like there's a broker curator, essentially, that Lord Denathrius has hired to curate his own private collection of, artifacts and trinkets and things that he's gathered from all over the Shadowlands. So you go into this space and there's just stuff all over the walls, like it's his own private museum. And then there's a broker boss who they like to play with portals. So there's a lot of fun things with that encounter where, it's a bit of playing with portals. He's portaling things off the wall. He's portaling people all over the place. So that one's really exciting. There's also I believe it's in the same wing, there's a giant, like epic ballroom floor because like Ian mentioned, the Revendreth are very opulent. They love to throw parties and why wouldn't Denathrius have the biggest, most awesome like dance floor essentially with this huge stained glass window in the background. And in that encounter, there's even elements of it that make you feel like you're performing a bit of a waltz, like doing a bit of a dance. So there's all kinds of really epic spaces with really interesting encounters that happen in there. And, I'm a sucker for fights that also, incorporate the environment wherever possible. So Denathrius himself very much so incorporates the environment in his encounter as well as the end boss. There's actually multiple floors that the encounter takes place on.
Wow. So kind of like, was it Blackhand in?
Yeah. Blackhand had 3 floors. I believe Denathrius has 2, but he has mirrors, so it's a little zanier.
That's insane. Yeah, I mean, we did Theatre of Pain last night. Is it Theatre,
awesome.
Theatre of Pain? There was one boss. I looked at the journal and I was with some people who already did it, and they said, yeah, don't look at the journal. So I thought, I'll have a little look, and it said like, watch out for hooks. I'm like, like what is this? And it was just this. I mean, no spoilerinos, but yeah, it was very. Whoever made that is a genius. It was incredible.
It was I think that was Gorechop, the abomination.
Yeah, that's it.
He definitely uses some meat hooks. We very much were inspired by, the themes of the different houses of Maldraxxus, and with abominations, they're obviously going to have different gruesome like body parts hanging from the different hooks so that they can stitch together their patchwork abominations.
Yeah.
I also did you get picked for the duel in that dungeon?
Oh, I didn't. I saw it happen though.
Did they fight it out?
Yeah.
Who won?
I think it was it was the tank. Was it the tank? God, I can't even remember now.
Yeah, that
It
is
was just, it was awesome.
I
Like such a cool,
yeah,
like it was obviously the last dungeon that you guys have released, and it's so
totally.
awesome. I mean, before that, like the other side was my other favorite. Really like
Mhm.
that. I think the last boss there is just awesome. It feels like a raid boss, honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty epic. Yeah, Theater of Pain is our, I think it's our only 5 boss dungeon, so we really wanted to crank up the epicity dial quite a bit on that one, and had a really great time with it. I remember when the dungeon got data mined, people were talking about that dueling mechanic, and they're like, "Oh my god, are we actually going to duel?" And I was like, "I can't wait for people to see that."
yeah, it's just some of the ideas that have come out with some of these dungeon encounters are so unique and awesome. I really do like them. I guess speaking of like Theatre of Pain, really felt some Naxxramas inspiration there a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, with Maldraxxus, like we mentioned, this is where, it very much so is inspired by some of the same looks, or really, Naxxramas is inspired by Maldraxxus in a lot of regards, because Maldraxxus is the place where, the origins of this death magic or this necromantic magic comes from. So this is where a lot of those creatures, basically were born from, or would go to when they were defeated potentially. But yeah, it very much so was an intentional, aesthetic decision to have those feel like they were similar to one another.
Yeah, it was really cool. So speaking of great dungeons, here's a random question that you probably haven't even thought of. Legion time walking.
What about it?
Are we gonna? Will we see that in?
Oh, so actually, with time walking, I'm not sure if you've noticed this, but there is a specific cadence that we have been following where, not with the launch of a new expansion, but like for instance with Battle for Azeroth, we did come out with Warlords of Draenor time walking, and that, minus, two expansions ago, cadence, I guess you would call it, is definitely something that we feel like has been successful. It's not something that we would do at launch.
Yep.
That doesn't feel like it should be the focus of the launch of an expansion, but it is absolutely something that we would look into exploring for a content update.
Awesome. Yeah, I did kind of expect that it was going to come eventually, but kind of looking forward to that one. I do like Legion a lot. So speaking of, so let's have a look. What have I got? Legendary powers. So I think Ian mentioned about some like old school kind of powers coming back, some tier set bonuses and stuff to do with the legendary system. I'd probably be kicking myself if I didn't ask this.
Okay.
Thunder Fury had a pretty cool proc, if I remember.
Yeah, it was an attack speed slow, right? Like,
Yeah,
and it just looked
amazing.
awesome. It like was bouncing all over the place. So with Thunder Fury in particular, that is a unique legendary where we feel like a major part of the identity of that weapon was the look and the proc of it, where a lot of the inspiration from that we're drawing from, and not just the inspiration, but also thematically, this rune carver was a person that would empower a lot of these items with their power in the past, or at least it might have come from this source. Like this is where the originations of that type of power would have come from. So we're primarily sticking to set bonuses, and when he says legendaries, I think he was referring to Legions, legendaries.
Yeah. Okay.
Where Thunder Fury, that was a unique weapon. Drawing that power out of Thunder Fury would not feel as appropriate.
True. Maybe I just got too excited or something.
Would you want it just as much if it didn't have that?
I don't know.
Look?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, what was it? Was it Legion when the rogues got kind of an inspired Thunder Fury type thing? I guess it's never
one of their artifacts.
Yeah, I guess it's never the same than getting the original one, which we can obviously now transmog as well, which is kind of great. Especially for my warrior with single-minded fury back, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Actually, we're also speaking of transmog. I believe with Shadowlands, one of the big pieces of feedback we hear often, and we're looking at making the change, is with your artifact appearances in particular, making it so that if you can wield the weapon, regardless of if you're that spec or not, you can transmog into the appearance. So with a lot of the artifacts, the transmogs are currently tied to the spec, where right now we're looking at expanding that into something that is tied to the weapon type only.
I think the chat liked that one.
Good to hear.
Wow.
Good to hear.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for confirming that. I guess speaking on Transmog, here's another pretty random one that was kind of brought from data mining. There was a string for shoulder Transmog, having, I think it's asymmetrical, right? Two different shoulders. Is that something?
Yeah.
Is that something we're going to see, or is that just kind of a testing thing that you guys threw in there?
Is that not working on the beta?
Unless I haven't. I mean, I tried to have a look. I couldn't. How would you do it?
That is for sure. That is for sure something that we still want to explore. Having asymmetrical shoulders, or if you want to have one off and one on. I know that's a really famous look. Like Herod shoulders are some of people's favorites, and it's like that one shoulder look. We do a lot of our own like dressing of NPCs, and that's even one of our favorites to do. Of like, all right, let's just put one shoulder on this guy because reasons, I guess. It just looks awesome. It really helps break up the silhouettes in particular. That is for sure something we still want to pursue if it's not already active. Awesome. I know that there were potentially some concerns in terms of like, okay, our shoulders are designed to be used as a pair, so sometimes there's some asymmetry to them that if you were able to mix and match some particular sets or shoulder pieces, they might look kind of weird and like. We call it clip, where like they're overlapping each other or like inside of one another. So there might be some concerns or things that we're looking into in that regard, and I'd have to follow up to see where that's at. But I know for sure that was something we wanted to pursue.
Awesome. So we're running out of time. I do have two very quick fire questions, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So I've been doing a ton of Chromie time testing. Super awesome feature. Really, really enjoying like going through the expansions, just like kind of trying out all the 10 to 50 sort of stuff. One question I get literally every day is Heirlooms in Shadowlands. What's the state? What's going to happen with like the way that they work in Shadowlands?
Right. So a change that we already made was we removed the experience bonus from Heirlooms. That is something that we're looking to replace that, but not with just a raw large percentage increase of experience gains. That big experience bonus made a lot of sense in a world where you're talking like, potentially 100 hours to level up or a large chunk of time to level. That big bump was something that we felt made a lot of sense. But in a world where, our goal for leveling from 1 to 50 is much, much smaller, closer to much closer to like 10 to 20 hours for people who are experienced with the game, or people with experience with the game. I'm sure we'll find ways to do it even faster. But we do want to. We definitely know that part of what makes those heirlooms feel exciting and interesting was that unique experience bonus. So we do want to add something to replace that will be hopefully equally as beneficial or feel unique and interesting for your level up experience, but not necessarily just here's a bunch of extra experience gains.
Awesome. Well, thank you for clearing that up. So one last one before we go. Will we ever see new class race combinations? So we've seen like gnome paladins in Hearthstone, for example, and some other kind of combinations in game. Even I think there was a night elf paladin at one point. Is that something that's on the consideration at some point? I know obviously we just got Death Knights at the end of BFA there.
You mean you don't count allied race class? Is that not? There's a bunch in Battle for Azeroth if we're counting that. No, nothing for Shadowlands, but it's always something that we're looking to explore, and often the story and the thematics of an expansion are what inform that. So with Death Knights we had determined the story has progressed quite a bit from where we were. We think this makes sense now, so let's open up the floodgates on that one, as it were. And often it's the story that is inspiring those types of things. So nothing new for the Shadowlands, like you mentioned, outside of the Death Knight changes most recently.
Yep. Perfect. Well, I think that's pretty much time. So really do appreciate your time, Morgan. Like, thank you so much for doing this. My very first interview. So I hope it was okay.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. No, absolutely. I hope we got through all your questions. That was fun.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
All right, cool. Thank you guys.
All right.
Have a good day.
Cheers.